One of the biggest mistakes that people make in personal finance is they will buy something big, assuming that everything will be perfect and nothing will change from how it is today. They don't account for future job loss or health issues or lack of income or needs changing in the family or the location. And so they've made this huge purchase and then they're stuck with this payment forever. And they're not considering that number one, things could change. And number two, that there is massive opportunity costs from not choosing a different alternative. Welcome to Old Money, a show dedicated to helping you build the trust fund you wish you were born with. Ladies who lunch, listen up. Life is not about looking rich. I want you to build a life and a legacy that feels rich in every sense of the word. If you're ready to stack cash, talk shop, and trade insider secrets, you're in the right place. These are the new rules to old money, so let's get after it. Hello, rich girls. Welcome back to Old Money, the podcast for women building the trust funds they wish they were born with. I am your host, Amber Frankusen, and while the girlies are building the trust funds, we have so much going on. I have so much to talk to you about that's just like random grab bag stuff, but today's episode is purposeful. We have a lot to cover, a major lesson, a life lesson, if you will. But like I said, so much has been going on. I want to talk about Vegas. I want to talk about Zendaya. I want to talk about, is that how you say her name? Is it Zendaya or Zendaya? I actually don't know because I've only ever read her name like on social media posts. Anyway, my point is so much is going on. I watched an incredible documentary. I think we're just going to do a grab bag episode on the next episode. But on this episode, I am really excited to talk about making decisions because if you've ever struggled to make decisions, especially financial ones, or you want to grow your capacity to make bigger decisions, you'll realize very quickly that the more money you make, the decisions are not just about affordability. It's not just about how much credit do I have, how much money is in my bank. It's a lot more advanced, and we're going to talk about it today. It's one of the most easy to understand topics in econ and economics. And it all has to do with a really big purchase in my life, which we'll get to in Birdie and Bogey. But I also just want to shout out before we even get into it, you guys, OMCC is popping off. I'm elated. I'm beyond, I'm so impressed, number one, by the caliber of women. You're like, what the hell is OMCC? Old Money Country Club, if you don't know. This is the private online community for rich girls and boys of the Old Money podcast. Anybody who's looking for a high vibe corner of the internet to connect, to network, to grow their network and their net worth. It was something that was asked for from you all. And so I wanted to put it together, and it's all contained in a really cute and easy little app. You can find the link in the show notes, and we'll make sure to post it a little bit more on social media. I realized we launched it and I didn't even link to it anywhere, but still we had it fill up with like dozens of girls, which is amazing. We're nearing like 100 members. And by the way, if you're one of the first 100 founding members, I have a super secret special surprise for you coming up very soon. So get excited. Anyway, OMCC, I wanted to create something, and I really hesitated for a long time before starting it because I didn't want to deal with a whole bunch of like moderation issues and Facebook and this and that. But I wanted to really figure out my intention behind it. And the reality is I wanted something that was a place that I could go where I knew I could find like-minded people who are all building something, working towards goals. There are so many people in here with side hustles. I know there's business owners connecting with one another about how they built their book of business and strategy. We have people meeting in real life. So this is an absolute joy for me to see and witness all of you rich girls connecting with one another. I mean, we have thousands of listeners every single month, and I just can't thank you enough for showing up. It's not for me, it's for yourselves and for your, new best friends and your new business partners and all the people that are in there. So if you are already in the OMCC, I'm so happy to have you there. If you haven't yet joined, again, this is all totally free. It's just a free online community on the internet, and you can download an app on your phone and just get connected with other rich girls. And once a month, I'll be in there with a really specific purpose, which I have yet to announce yet. I think that's going to come on another episode or two. But like for today, for example, I just dropped in like a social media PDF of like how our team runs our social media accounts for ultimate success. So if you're a small business owner and you want, the benefit of grabbing stuff like that for free, like that's where you're going to find it. It's an OMCC. So anyway, love you guys so very much. And also, I'm really stoked about this poll that we put up last week on social media. I want to shout out Madison from my team. If you haven't met her yet, she's in the OMCC. She's running the social. She's doing an incredible job. I'm also in the DMs, of course, but she put up this really cute poll and I wanted to know like where people are at or what's going on. And we had an incredible number of respondents on this poll on Instagram. Just to give you an idea of our audience, as you would expect, we had a pretty standard deviation of ages. We did like under 25, 26 to 34, 35 to 44. And the majority of people, it's like a little over 80% are between 26 and 44. And then we have people on the outliers that are over 45, under 25. And then what I thought was really interesting was people's employment status. So 35% of our audience that responded to this poll are self-employed. 22% of them work for a small business. 29% of them work for a big corporation, and 13% are not working. So again, on this Old Money Country Club, if you're looking for help climbing the corporate ladder, or you're working for a small business, or you're self-employed, your people are there. Like, this is really impressive to me. Like, we're all hustling and doing something. So just know that your community is there for you. And then how about this for a breakdown of money goals? We had getting out of debt. 27% of you said that was your goal. Retirement, 9%. Investing, 35%. Love that for us. And savings, 29 of you said that was your goal. So I love that too. And then we also talked about how often we reviewed our financials, what our financial topics of interest. Overwhelmingly, it was investing. So I think today's topic will dovetail nicely into that. And then overwhelmingly, your favorite Old Money episode types were lifestyle. 40% of you said that lifestyle were your favorite types of episodes, followed by financial tactics, then personal growth and development, and then career and business. So I love this. If you're not yet following us on social media, it's at Old Money Podcast. And by the way, if you are not yet subscribed to the show, do me a little favor. Go on to Spotify, go on to Apple Podcasts, click subscribe. That way the episodes get automatically downloaded to you every single time that we drop one. I think I'm going to drop a couple of off-cycle ones coming up here soon. And the reason that's important is because I can see the numbers. Like, we have thousands of people listening to the podcast, unique users every single month, but like the downloads are just not matching up with how many listeners we have. So please go download the episodes by automatically subscribing. It helps the show so much. That's my only ask of you today. Actually, I'm going to ask you for one other thing. If you have a rich girl that needs to be a part of this community, will you send this podcast episode to them? Will you have them come into our community, because it's growing? We want more rich girls in our community to network with and grow our net worth with. That's my second ask today. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Let's get into today's episode with the Birdie and Bogey. Remember, if you don't play golf, it's okay. Neither do I. A birdie is a score in golf where you get one stroke under par, which is good. So I'll tell you the best thing that's happened to me recently. And a bogey is one stroke over par, which is bad. So I'll tell you my sad bogey of the week, which is honestly sad bogey of the country. However, I just want you to know that I'm helping prime you for the country club with this vocabulary so that you look good on the links. So let's talk about my birdie. It is that we bought a new freaking car and I'm so excited about it. It was a huge purchase. And here's the thing. We traded in my car. We are a one-car household, by the way. We share one car in our household. We are very lucky to be able to do that right now. And it saves us a ton of money from not having two car payments. But we were using and driving as a couple my beloved Jeep. I had a Jeep Grand Cherokee. It was a 2012. And your girl had like almost 200,000 miles on this car. And if it weren't for the fact that I knew that in order to get any more like substantial miles out of this vehicle, I would have to make some expensive repairs that would actually be worth more than the value of the car at this time. So it was time to retire her, unfortunately. But I want to acknowledge, number one, giving massive gratitude to that amazing vehicle for getting me around safely for all these years. And also I want to highlight that I was driving a 12-year-old car that didn't have all the bells and whistles, that had a couple of items that were a little beat up on it. But I took really good care of what I owned over all of these years. I actually paid that car off within 2 years of buying it. So I have not had, and I bought that one used too, I have not had a car payment for 8 years. And I cannot tell you how amazing it is to not have a car payment, because it's money that you can funnel elsewhere. And that's what this episode is really going to be talking about today. But I think there's a lot of people out there that really do love cars. I love cars too, by the way. I love driving cars. We had the amazing opportunity to go race BMWs on a racetrack last year, which was one of the highlights of my life. Like, I love to drive fast. I love nice cars, but I also don't think that I deserve anything, nor do I care about anybody who's going to judge me based on the vehicle that I'm driving, because no one from the outside looking in knows what my values are or where my money priorities lie. And quite frankly, very clear to me that my priority to build wealth is more important to me than random strangers being impressed by my car when I drive down the street. And so I made an intentional decision when I had this Jeep that I was going to drive it until the wheels fell off, which we were literally almost there. And I'm so glad that I did, because it freed up, number one, so much space in my budget every single month, but also it gave me more room to invest and save more money. It also made sure that I wasn't in debt to anyone. And so owning my car outright really did put me in a nice position so that I didn't have to worry about a payment and everything was in my name. And since it was in my name, that means it goes on my net worth tracker as an asset. Now, a car is a depreciating asset. That means that over time, your car is going to be worth less and less money. And the reason for that is because you're using it. It gets wear and tear. It also gets outdated. So when you buy a car, it's going to be an asset that you own, but it's not one that's going to appreciate and grow in value like a Birkin or a house if you're in a growing housing market. It's something that's going to lose value over time, whether you use it or not. And the only exception to that is if you have, I don't know, like a vintage something or other, or like a Bugatti or something that's in high demand. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about your daily driver. We're talking about getting from point A to point B. And so, number one, I want to normalize the fact that driving a car, even if it's not new, it doesn't say anything about your success level. It doesn't say anything about who you are as a person. And if you are working through the challenges around driving an older car, make an intentional decision to say, if it's important to me, I will invest in it. But not everything can be important to you, right? Like if cars are really important to you and that's where you want to put your money, as long as you can afford it, I say go for it, sister. But if you want to build wealth, if you want to travel well, if you want to save for a home, if you want to live in a nice neighborhood, whatever it is that's most important to you, you set your priorities and you determine where you're going to spend your money. But don't default to going to a dealership, buying something new and getting yourself stuck, which is this week's bogey. And when I say this week, it's something that's been plaguing me for months that I've been wanting to talk about because it's all over my TikTok. And since I've been researching cars and we've been looking for a new vehicle, it's something that I cannot get away from. And it's this normalization of $900, $1,000, and $1,100 or more per month car payments for cars that are not even worth it. I'm sorry, they're not even worth it. When I lived in La Jolla back in it was like 2013 when I first moved there, on the corner of one of the major intersections, there was a Maserati dealership on one side and there was a Bentley dealership on the other side. They were like kitty corner from each other on this intersection coming into La Jolla. And I used to look at this sign. There was a big vinyl banner in the window of the Maserati dealership. And it said, lease a Maserati for just $799 per month. And I used to think, who in their right mind would spend $800 a month on leasing a car? It's crazy. But then again, I was living in La Jolla, which is one of the most expensive places to live. There's a lot of people with a lot of wealth there, and that's something that actually gets normalized very, very quickly. However, when you go on TikTok now, you're going to see a couple of different things. Number one, there's this trend, that sound that's like, I'm also just a girl. Don't forget. And people are using that sound, recording themselves in their car, and they're putting the text on the screen that says, me having a $900 car payment because all I wanted was CarPlay, a moonroof, and a little logo that said Lexus. Or even worse, the ones that are saying, I wanted a little logo that said Nissan or Kia. And I'm not hating on Nissans or Kias. I don't know much about the cars, but I hear that they're both reliable and in high demand. And if that's what you want, get it. But please, for the love of God, let's not normalize $900 a month payments. Because here's the other thing that I'm seeing on TikTok. It's all of these employees of different car dealerships, and somebody on their team, their social media girly or whatever, will walk around with the phone and they'll be like, hey, Jim, what car do you drive and how much is your payment? And he'll be like, I drive a Hummer and my payment is $1,100. And they go like, hey, Marissa, what car do you drive and what's your payment? She goes, I have a such and such and my payment is $750. Hey, Marco, what kind of car do you drive and what's your payment? Marco's like, I drive a GT, blah, 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 and my payment's $980. And I started seeing this months ago, and I knew that car debt was bad because we're reading it in the news. But what's happening is that these people that are in the industry and do have a lot of identity wrapped up with what type of car that they drive are normalizing payments like this to get it normalized for you. And we need to talk about this because the average monthly car payment in the US right now is $738. If you're looking at a used car, the monthly average in the US is $532. That number just represents the car payment, so it does include interest. And obviously, we are in a high interest rate environment right now. So your interest is going to be more if you buy a car today than if you would have bought a car in 2021. Same thing goes with homes. And that's why we have this affordability issue with purchasing homes right now because rates are high. But that payment number, 738 or 532, that's before insurance, that's before maintenance, that's before gas. Unless you are in a position where you have fuck you money, I don't even want to have a conversation about leasing. Because honestly, leases are giving you restrictions on how much you can drive. You don't own the car and you're paying a premium just for the opportunity to drive something new. And I'm telling you guys, a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, or 6-year-old car is not that bad. So there's also, of course, if you have a business and you can make it a business expense, I'm not a tax attorney. This is not financial advice. Just this conversation that's not about leasing. And it's just not something that I subscribe to because as we know, a car is a depreciating asset. So we're looking to get the best value that we can for something that's going to last us a long time so that we can eventually own it outright and have that as an asset that we can then, at the end of its useful life, trade in for something new and get money back out of it. So when we talk about normalizing these car payments, I want to talk about what my criteria was for our vehicle that we got so that we could get away from this crazy depreciation rate. Because if you've heard this before, I never had a number to go with it. But when you drive a new car off the lot, as soon as you make that purchase, that car has already lost a lot of its value. In fact, according to bankrate.com, when you drive a car off of a lot, a car is going to lose 10% of its value on average. And in 3 years, it'll lose up to 50% of the car value on average. So what that means is if you buy a $50,000 car brand new off the lot and you drive it off the lot one street away, and then you want to sell it, the most you could get for it on the open market is $45,000. And in 3 years, the most you can probably get for that car is about $25,000. So you're taking a huge hit on the value of the car right away. And again, this is not about affordability. It's about opportunity costs. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So my criteria was a car that was used within 1 or 2 years old and had under 30,000 miles on it. And we actually got a car that had half the amount of miles on it than I thought, which was amazing. And it's only 2 years old. So what that did is it allowed us to get a better deal on the value of the car so that the person that owned it before us took the biggest hit of depreciation on the value. And then we can swoop in and get it for a much lower cost than buying new. And here's the thing. We looked for a lot of vehicles within that 1, 2, or 3 year range. You're going to get a lot of vehicles that are coming off of leases. So the typical lease term is 36 months, which is 3 years. And when people are on leases, like I mentioned, they can only drive so much. They get free maintenance. So the maintenance records are usually pretty good. And then also, that they're trading it in for something else. So they're probably in good standing with the dealership. So those are really good cars to look for. And speaking of it, there is a shortage of available, affordable vehicles out there. We looked for 5 months. Okay. So it is totally different when your car breaks down. You have to buy something right away. But we had the luxury of time on our side to really wait to find the exact right car that we wanted, the exact specs and the exact miles and everything on it. And by the way, just like a side note here, buying a car can be very emotional, like making bigger financial decisions and stretching your capacity to be able to do so. It's a skill. It's like being flexible. Like you don't go to yoga on the first day and can do, like dancer's pose. You have to learn to get into it. So that is getting comfortable with your money, being in a relationship with your money, knowing how it works for you, knowing that you're going to treat it well so that it can support you, and not letting your emotions run the show. This is like calming your financial fight or flight 101, right? Because when you walk into a dealership or you walk into any situation, it's going to be high pressure. It's going to cause you to feel emotions. And the emotions might be excitement, it might be fear, it might be stress. But here's the thing, if you can stay grounded in what you want, what you can afford, and you don't let somebody who's out to make a commission on you take advantage of the situation, and you can stay grounded with a calm financial nervous system, you will make the right decision for yourself. And how do you figure out what that right decision is for you? Well, it's all about what you can afford. And again, this is not just about your monthly payment. Today's episode is really all about opportunity costs. And if you took econ like me in college, this was the one class I did not understand. Like, I just did not understand the topics, the concepts of micro, macro. It was all so confusing to me. But this is one thing that I've learned to be the most helpful thing in making good decisions for myself in every aspect of my life. And it's evaluating an opportunity cost. An opportunity cost represents the potential benefits that you're giving up when you choose one choice over another. It's basically what you're not getting from not pursuing the second choice. So a really easy example on this is if you have one cookie to share. I saw this example on TikTok, and you have two friends. You can't split the cookie in half. You have to give the cookie to one person or the other. If you give the cookie to person A, the opportunity cost of not giving it to person B is that you might damage the relationship, right? So the opportunity cost is that your relationship with person B might be damaged. It's exactly the same though if you give the cookie to person B, your relationship with person A might be damaged. That's the cost. The cost is the damage to the relationship from not choosing one person over another. These costs are, and the reason this is so important is because costs are not just monetary. I think a lot of people look at buying a car and they're saying, how much can I afford monthly? And then you go into a dealership and you say, my budget is $500 a month. And what this car salesperson will do, and let me just remind you, these car salespeople, they are not trying to help you. They do not know your personal financial situation. They do not know what your responsibilities or liabilities are. They do not know what your life status is. They're trying to make a commission. So they are, quote unquote, helping you out. And when you say, oh, I can't afford a $700 a month car payment, they're like, no problem. We'll just extend the life of your loan. So instead of going into a 36-month loan, like 3 years, or a 48-month, they'll be like, here, take a 60-month loan for 5 years or a 72-month loan for 6 years. And then all of a sudden your monthly payment goes down. One of the biggest mistakes that people make in personal finance is they will buy something big, assuming that everything will be perfect and nothing will change from how it is today. They don't account for future job loss or health issues or lack of income or needs changing in the family or the location. And so they've made this huge purchase and then they're stuck with this payment forever. And they're not considering that number one, things could change. And number two, that there is massive opportunity costs from not choosing a different alternative. So when we talk about opportunity costs, let's just go into it with the car example to start. So you're making a decision to buy a new car, right? And again, an opportunity cost is not a choice. It's the valuation of forgoing a different choice. So for example, if you buy a really flashy car, the opportunity cost of buying the more affordable or more prudent car to you might feel like a loss of admiration or respect or a perception of other people might have of you of your success level. That might be a cost to you. Or if you are, one of these girlies on TikTok that are saying, but I'm just a girl. And I hate that, by the way, because girls should and can be incredibly smart with their money. And I hate just kind of like brushing off this responsibility because I'm just a girl. But let's say that this girl, she's a Gen Zer, she's in her 20s, she doesn't know anything about personal finance. Her name is, I don't know, what are Gen Zs called these days? I think everybody's name is like, Emma or Bella or Ella, something like that. So she's going into it. She's like, I'm going to get this amazing car and I'm going to buy it and it's going to cost me $900 a month. And maybe right now she lives with her parents and she makes $1,250 from her paycheck or whatever. So she thinks she can afford it. If she can afford it, good for her. Okay. That's not the question here. Whatever happens, she figures out a way to make that $900 a month payment. However, the alternative that was presented to her, let's pretend was a car that was half as much. It was $450. So let's say she has a budget to spend of $900 per month. She can either put all that $900 to her car, or she can pick a different car where her car payment is half and she pays $450. And then $450 goes into the retirement fund. The math is very easy here. If you do 900 times 48-month loan, you're at a $43,000 car. Split that right down the middle, you get $21,000. So you could say, cool, she bought a $21,000 car instead of a $43,000 car. Good for her. But the difference is if she takes that $450 and puts it into a retirement fund, and let's say it earns 8% for 40 years and it just sits there, she would have that $21,000 that she put in. Remember, because $450 every month for just 48 months, that's going to give her 21 grand. And she let it sit in a retirement account for 40 years because this is a Gen Zer, right? So by the time she's 60, it'll have just been sitting there. It'll be worth $469,000. $469,000. So the opportunity cost of not buying the cheaper car, of buying the $900 a month car, the opportunity cost of that decision, if she has the full budget available of $900, the opportunity cost is actually $447,000. Again, you can either have a $900 a month car payment for 48 months when you're in your 20s, or you can put half of that money away and let it sit for 40 years and you'll have $469,000 at the end of it. And you're like, yeah, but I want to live now and I want to have a nice car now. I get it. So do I. But we can't have everything we want all at once. An old money lifestyle is about making decisions that best benefit our future selves. And quite frankly, just leaving $21,000 in like an IRA or retirement fund where it's, just burning and churning every year, you never have to touch it. That's a pretty easy way to make $447,000. Like, I rather have that than a $900 car payment for a car that's not even going to be worth that in value. Let's just go back to that whole thing again, the value, because I think this is so important. If you buy a $35,000 car at like a 6-year loan with 8% interest, it's going to cost you $44,000. You're paying like $9,000 in interest, right? But the vehicle will only be worth about a third of what you paid when you end up paying off that car. So you're paying $44,000 over the cost of 6 years. And when you're done paying off that car, it's only worth $10,000. Listen, I'm not here to shame anyone about the car decisions that they're making, but if you're about to go into it, I want to recalibrate us away from this TikTok trend of normalizing $900 and $1,100 car payments per month and letting you know that it is perfectly acceptable to drive something that is prudent and serves your future self more than your current ego. And that is such a big pill to swallow, I know, but I just want you to know that the opportunity cost in making any of these big financial decisions in your life can change your financial future in a very meaningful way. I want to talk about a couple other examples of opportunity costs because that one has to do all with money, right? And numbers. And we're looking at, the predicted future value of $450 a month that you invest for 4 years and then leave alone. I mean, that's pretty black and white. Like, there's a big opportunity cost there. But let's talk about some other things, like the opportunity cost of going out and partying super hard every Friday night. So let's look at the value and the return on investment of doing these things. So if you go out and you party on a Friday night, you're going to have a great time. You're going to see your friends. You're going to get cute pictures for Instagram. And you're going to think, okay, well, the cost was free because I got all these guys to buy my drinks and I didn't have to pay for anything. Good for you. But the opportunity cost is the alternative to what happens if you don't drink or what happens if you go to bed early. Those other more healthy opportunities, the cost of not pursuing those is the fact that you're going to feel hungover on Saturday. You're going to eat like shit. You're not going to go to your workout. You're going to feel crabby on Sunday. And then you're going to have the worst Sunday scaries and then have a bad week at work the next week. That's a pretty extreme example. And it's one of those things why we talk about everything in moderation. I just came back from a weekend in Vegas, which was so fun. But the cost was my productivity was hurt on Monday morning. So I had to make up for it at the end of the week. That's just reality. So the opportunity cost is future me making sure that my business is healthy, that this podcast is recorded on time, which it's not, by the way. I'm totally late on turning this into my editor. And it's a real life example of the cost of making that decision. But listen, I'm not going to Vegas every single weekend. Most of the time, I don't even drink alcohol. So it's totally fine to have that happen every once in a while because I also want the cute pictures for Instagram. I want the amazing memories with my friends, and I want to go to an amazing dinner at Mayfair Supper Club. So that's what I chose. But here's another opportunity cost. You could say, I want to start a side hustle. And maybe when you choose that, you have some costs associated with it. Maybe there's financial costs for the startup of starting a side hustle. Maybe you have less time for yourself or for socialization or for resting, but maybe you're also going to gain some other skills. You're going to create more revenue. You're going to meet more people. Well, what's the cost of not pursuing the side hustle? It's status quo, right? And I'm not saying everybody needs to have a side hustle. I'm just saying if that's a decision that you're making, if you choose to not do that, then maybe you don't get the new skills, you don't get the new revenue, and you don't meet more people. You don't grow your business or whatever it is. So there are costs to not choosing to do that, even though there are obvious costs in choosing to invest your time and resources and energy in starting a new venture. Or here's another one. This is a hot topic. This one we always get a lot of questions about: buying a house. Obviously, one of the benefits of buying a house is that you're building equity and hopefully your asset will appreciate over time if the market conditions are correct, and there's no way to predict that. But if you buy a house, there are still opportunity costs with that. For example, you won't be able to move as easily. It's much more cost prohibitive to move after you have to sell a house and pay closing costs and broker's fees and all that type of thing. When you have a house payment for your mortgage, what I love that Ramit Sethi always says, and we're going to talk about him more in this episode because, oh my God, I just watched the craziest thing. But what he says is that rent is the most you'll pay each month in your housing, and a mortgage is the minimum you'll pay each month. And I love that phrasing because there are, number one, so many phantom costs of owning a home, whether it's property taxes, insurance, whether it's maintenance, whether it's just time. Like if you buy a house, you are going to, sure, you're going to build equity, but now you're going to also be mowing your lawn and weeding your garden and fixing repairs and doing house projects and all these things. So it's a trade-off. If you decide to buy over rent, some of the opportunity costs are time and resources and your weekends and where your money goes, right? So all of these phantom costs that come up are also costs of time, energy, motivation, resources, all the things. And that's why we see so many people, especially in San Diego. I mean, there's so many people here that buy second homes, third homes, that come to the beach, and they want that lock and leave lifestyle. They don't want to worry about maintenance. They don't want to worry about keeping up the grounds. They want to have something they can lock up and leave. And it's totally easy to take care of and maintain. You're not paying gardeners. You're not paying housekeepers. It's just easy. And also renting does give you a lot more flexibility of where you can live, what you can afford right now in this market. It's right now that renting in a lot of places is much less expensive than buying a home right now. It's not comparable if you bought a home 3 years ago at the 2.5% interest rate, but it is comparable if you're trying to move now or make a decision now. You need to make sure that you take into consideration the opportunity cost. Here's one more for you. Flying. This is a big point of discussion. I just talked with my neighbor about this today. She was going on a long haul flight tomorrow and she was saying like, oh, I'm just dreading it because going in economy is so tough. Well, the reality, it is very tough. Flying economy is much less comfortable, but it's also much less expensive. So you can look at this one of two ways. You can say, I'm going to fly economy, and the opportunity cost of doing so is that I'm not going to be well rested when I show up at my destination. Or you can say, I'm going to choose business class so that I can have the benefit of feeling rested when I show up at my place of final destination, but I'm not going to have the extra money. So there's a higher cost associated with it. And when you look at the economy ticket, you can say, well, listen, a flight is just 10 hours and a Birkin bag is forever. So honestly, the conversation just comes back to where we always start, which is what do you value more of? You can have everything you want, but just not all at once. And you have to make decisions about the priorities. And I think a lot of us tend to just float through life unconsciously, doing the next thing, buying the next car, upgrading our flight status, going to the hottest vacation spots, seeing what our neighbors are doing, and then following up by adding a pool to our house after they added a pool to their house. And it's a lot of this unconsciousness. So if there's anything that I can bring to this episode, it's about being really intentional with the decisions that we make, especially when they are larger purchases, and asking ourselves, what is really driving this decision? If your ego, if your perceived status, if your brand association is what's driving your purchase decision and it's stretching you outside of a comfortable budget to where you are going to be foregoing some major opportunity costs, whether it's monthly savings or potential future earnings on money that you could funnel to investments instead of a car payment, that's something to think about. And I know it's not as sexy, but to me, there's nothing sexier than laying my head down with the pillow at night and knowing that I don't owe anybody anything, that I'm not working and slaving away just to pay bills. I'm working and building something to grow my net worth. I cannot tell you the difference in my energy levels and just my stress levels around not having debt that I'm carrying and making decisions that are for my future self and how my current self wants to feel, which is calm and at peace. And I'm really working with this energy of I don't work hard for my money works hard for me. And that means making different decisions so that that can be true. I'm embodying that all the time. And that's why I invest so much. And that's why I put so much into building my business and building my team and doing all the things that I do and learning about finances so that that can be my reality. And that's what I hope for all of us, to be honest. And just to bring it all home, this whole thing really came up for me because I saw this TikTok clip from Ramit Sethi. I mentioned him before. He's the author of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I read the book originally in like 2009, maybe when it first came out. Changed my financial future, that's for sure. But I also didn't implement everything that I should have at that age. And we all were told, invest early and you'll have so much more money. And I hate to say it, but it's totally true. Anyway, Ramit has this incredible show called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It's a podcast. And he also recorded because he actually does interviews with couples and he has a video component. I watched it on YouTube. And you guys, my mind was blown. Okay, let me tell you about this couple. This couple came in and they were spending the whole half of their show. I was actually like fast forwarding because it was getting a little boring, arguing about how the husband spent so much money on snacks and he doesn't participate in the family finances. And the wife feels like everything falls on her. And I was like, wow, this is like really intense. It's relationship coaching. There was a lot of like first generation money stories from the husband that he was sharing about his mom. He was using a lot of language like, I'm terrible with my finances. He kept giving this like analysis that like they're fine because they're making all their monthly payments. And this man was driving me crazy because he was just unconsciously handing away all of his financial responsibility to his wife because he wasn't participating in the conversation in a meaningful way. Like he literally was not getting it. And what he was not getting was astounding to me because they did a net worth tracker for them and they were $333,000 negative net worth. And of that negative net worth, $100,000 of it was just for car payments. And this is where it gets worse. This man's monthly income was $4,000 a month, and he owed $69,000 on his car, but his car is only valued at $48,000, which means he has negative equity in the car, meaning he's going to pay more for the car than it's ever going to be worth. It was so hard to watch. And they would get in these little tiffs and, Ramit would ask him like, how many vacations do you take a year? And the husband would be like, oh, well, she loves vacations. And it's like, bro, we all love vacations. Like, let's not point fingers here about like who's responsible for taking vacations. You guys are both going. But what was crazy was that he just wasn't understanding why it was wrong for him to be so checked out of the family's future. Again, he kept saying like, we're good because we're making our payments. But all they were doing was paying off creditors and paying off car payments, and they weren't building anything for themselves. And what was so interesting was that his wife admitted that when they went to the dealership, because he had realized on his previous car that he was underwater on it and he had gotten in an accident, he was in a lease. So he traded it in for another BMW. So this man is driving a luxury car when he literally doesn't have a job to support it. The wife is also driving a luxury car, and they, bought a new house, renovated it, did all of these things. And somehow he wasn't understanding the gravity of the fact that they were going to need to make changes to improve their financial future. Living in a negative net worth is no way to live in this world. You are going to be struggling to get by forever. And I don't want that for anybody. I don't want it for this couple, and I don't want it for anybody listening to this podcast. I want to give us the tools and the empowerment to make changes in our lives and make decisions that behoove us and support us growing into the women that we want to be. And, Ramit, the reason his podcast and his show is so good, by the way, is because he'll be interviewing these couples and then he'll break away and kind of do like a commentator thing later. So the couples are not hearing him talk about it. And he said something that was so resonant with me, which was he wasn't there to blast these people or shame them, but he really wanted this man to take a leadership role in his family so that they could get out of the financial position that they were in. Because you want to be able to, especially when you're a high earner, you want to be able to go to the grocery store or go enjoy nice dinners with your friends and not have to worry about, can I afford this or not? And making decisions like investing in a car, and I say investing loosely because you're not getting much out of it, but investing $900 or $1,000 a month into a car payment, you're trading away the opportunity to go do all the things you want to do with your friends. You're giving away the opportunity to go on luxury vacations with your partner. And I feel the same as Ramit said, like, I don't want to shame anybody that's in this position. I just want people to feel good about their money situation and be aligned with the choices that they make consciously so that they can feel empowered around money and not a slave to it. This was just a really tough episode to watch. Honestly, it was really painful to see the conflict between the couple. And that's another cost of getting into debt for things that you can't afford. It really strains relationships, and it really takes the magic and the shine out of a partnership when you have one person who's not as engaged in finances as the other and is not aligned with your financial priorities. It's so hard to navigate that. Again, the opportunity cost of not being engaged in your money, especially when you're in a partnership like a marriage, is a degradation of that relationship. It hurts the relationship. We're all driving cars, especially if you live in California, most parts of California anyway. I know that this is a big decision we all have to make, but I really want to emphasize the opportunity cost of buying a car that's more than you can afford. First of all, you're going to limit the amount that you can use to funnel that money elsewhere and invest it to grow for you. You might be stressed with money and in debt, and it might harm your relationships. You might be not able to make other decisions like going to great dinners or going on vacations because you have these liabilities that are due. And again, just because you can't afford the monthly payment, that does not give you permission to extend the life of your loan in order to be able to afford it, because it just drags on the length of time that you're on the hook for something that's going to depreciate in value anyway. This is not financial advice. This is my perspective on buying a car. And I feel really grateful to be in the position that I'm in and working with my partner to achieve our financial goals and navigate relationship conversations and navigate negotiations about who wants what and what's most important to us. So with that, I will leave you today wishing you all the best of luck if you have to go out there and buy a car. Just remember, car salespeople are not your friends. They are there to make commissions, and make sure you understand how people are compensated before you start working with them, because that's definitely going to influence how they treat you. I'm wishing you all of the best, the wealthiest week. I am going to come at you next week with a grab bag of a whole bunch of random stuff to talk about. I can't wait to get there. And if you haven't joined OMCC, you'll find the link to that in the show notes today. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll talk to you on the next episode. Bye-bye. Feeling rich? I hope so. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Old Money. If you have questions you want answered, email me at oldmoneypodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on social. We are at Old Money Podcast, and I am at your service. If this episode spoke to you, inspired you, helped you, if you took a single note, it would mean the world to me if you could please just take a minute to rate and review the podcast. And if you're not doing so already, subscribe. And if you have friends who like getting rich, please share this episode with them, even if it's just on your Instagram story. And I'd love you more than Jeff Bezos loves Amazon Prime. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you on the next episode. Remember, I'm not your lawyer, I'm not your tax professional, and I'm not your financial advisor. The content presented in this podcast is intended to entertain, educate, inspire, and support listeners in their personal and professional development and does not constitute business, financial, or legal advice. In addition to that, this episode may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products and services.